Nigel, let us know what the clubs have decided first and foremost.
Well, at the AGM of the Super League clubs yesterday, the clubs decided that they didn't want to consider a 10-team Super League competition. They had previously said at a meeting last month that they thought 14 was too many in terms of the elite competition. So, in effect, by default, it'll be a 12-team competition with effect from 2015.
Lots of thinking and lots of processes going on there. Talk us through some of those and some of the other avenues that have been explored throughout the process.
Well, as you're aware, the Super League was expanded to 14 clubs in 2008-9, I think, as part of the introduction of licensing. We always said that we would look at licensing as a concept over a two cycle period of 3 years, so that's 6 years. So it's entirely right for the sport to be reviewing the impact of licensing, the benefits that have accrued, but some of the challenges that still exist, and that we are now planning for what the competition framework will look like for Super League and Championship, in fact the whole of the game, with effect from 2015.
So now on the table there's two options based around a 12-team Super League. Does the RFL, the governing body, do they have a favoured option that they'd like to see go through?
Well, we're working on all of the options that are on the table. There are, as you say, two options, particularly now left with a 12-team competition. One involves a more traditional method of promotion and relegation, which is a lot like the competition actually looked like before 2008. And the other one, of course, is the one that seems to have attracted a degree more publicity, which is where there are two top divisions of 12, but then after a full round of home and away fixtures plus magic in each, that's 23 fixtures, you then move into an extended playoff of 7 games. So that's got some traction as well, and we undertook yesterday on behalf of the clubs to evaluate the merits of both.
So the headlines are the two teams potentially, the two teams dropping out of the top tier of Rugby League, Super League, but the implications much more far-reaching and touching every club from the top of the tree to the community game.
That's absolutely the case. This is a whole of game policy review, and what we absolutely understand that it isn't just about what's best for Super League, but it's also what's best for the Championship and Championship 1, or competitions that are currently branded Championship and Championship 1. And it's also about young player production, it's about academy and making sure that players are playing in the right clubs at the right standard with the right academies. So it is a whole of game solution, yes.
Is it fair to say that much of the remaining legwork is about getting the finances in order and right for the teams and for all the different leagues to survive and prosper?
Finance is always at the centre of these things and will undoubtedly be at the centre of things going forward. I think that the game is mature enough to understand that you can't go from a part-time competition in Championship to a full-time competition in Super League on a straightforward promotion and relegation system and expect clubs to be able to bridge that divide successfully, either way for that matter, going up or going down. So part and parcel of restructuring the Super League down from 14 to 12 is about freeing up the kind of resource that is needed to invest at the top of Championship to make sense of that dilemma, yes.
Lots of talk about the Super League, but how important is it that the Championship clubs are incredibly competitive, to bridge that gap between the two top leagues?
It's absolutely vital. That's entirely the point. That if we're going to free up the gangway between Championship and Super League, then we have to put some resources into Championship to make sense of that. There'll be little point in moving from a part-time competition to a full-time competition, expecting clubs to make sense of that. We've got some very good clubs at Championship level, and I think our obligation as central administrators is to create an environment that allows the well-run clubs a chance to flourish and prosper.
You've touched upon it briefly, but how important is it that the policy review is about much more than the structure of the league system?
Every part of this game is interdependent upon each other. So people talk about how do we get England to win at World Cups, and of course we've got to get 25 great athletes that can lock horns with Australia and New Zealand and all the other nations that are going to challenge us over October and November. But that can only happen if you've got a great elite domestic competition where these players play, but also the production lines at academy and at community clubs ensure that we've got the throughput of players, and every part of that chain is dependent upon each other. So it is an integrated whole of game solution that we're seeking.
And I guess the next question is what has been determined about next year, 2014 in the Super League season? How do we make that transition to this new structure? Yeah,
2014 will be the transition year. First of all, it is the last year of a 3-year licence, so there are legal obligations that say, of course, the people have signed licences in good faith and we'll be honouring those. So everything that we're doing now is about preparing for 2015.
What does the process from here on in entail now? I suppose there's still plenty of work to be done on it, but when can we expect it to all be finalised and everything be in order and present it to the clubs finally?
The most important issue was to get the number of clubs sorted out, and there's been a lot of debate about should it stay at 14 or should it shrink to 10, and we needed to nail that particular point. So that point was addressed yesterday and addressed positively yesterday. That gives us a degree of certainty now to look at the two alternatives about how you move from one division to another in a promotion relegation environment. All of the detail that is needed to make sense of that, like minimum standards, the finances you talked about, and the playoff mechanisms, all of those individual pieces of work have all been considered, but now need to be nailed down over the course of the next 2 months, so that by the end of this playing season we've got a really clear picture about what 2014 looks like, with a view to starting the new structure in 2015.
Finally, how pleased have you been with the policy review, the whole process, and the real work that's gone into that?
I think one of the strengths of rugby league is that when it needs to look at itself, it's prepared to do so in a very honest way, in a very candid way, and I think that it's really important that all stakeholders around the sport, whether they be the elite clubs or the community clubs, get an opportunity to influence the direction of the sport. We're speaking to the players, we're speaking to coaches and supporters groups, and that's a great strength of rugby league. It's in touch with its constituents, and I think that people have embraced this process really positively.